Welcome everybody to Money 911, where we talk about health, wealth, and peace of mind, and how to have peace of mind with safe money and all the strategies that are out there that you don't know about. Now, before we get started, you already heard the awesome intro of my beautiful guest here, Jordan, who's wearing pink for me. And make sure you can see us, our beautiful faces here, over on YouTube at healthymoneyhappylife.com, Money 911. So you get the video. It's fun. Get to see our smiling faces. So make sure you subscribe. That really helps us push it out there. And thank you so much, Jordan, for being here. It's just
great to be with you, Kris. Appreciate it.
Really, we had a great show on your show too.
Right.
Make sure everybody listens.
Oh, the Money Answer Show, and I had you as my guest on the Voice America Business Network. Correct. I've been doing it for a long, long time.
Yeah, you've definitely been doing it a long time. I mean, after reading your bio, right, is faint. How many millions of shows and what is it? What, 17 books or something?
It's 14. Let's not overstate it. 14.
Okay. Oh, just 14.
And some of the books, like the Dictionary of Financial Terms, has 10 editions, but I count that as one book.
That's fabulous, because you and I are both into this literacy, financial literacy. So, and I have that course, Create Income You'll Never Outlive. So we'll have you as a guest inside of there, and that we'll talk about later, right? So, but there's so much to talk about here. You're just this wealth of really great information, and what I really want to get into is about the mortgage. You got my attention. I'm sure a lot of people will really want to know about this. Talk to me about mortgage free in 5 to 7 years.
So this is a strategy called mortgage equity optimization that, as you say, literally can allow the average person to pay off their mortgage in roughly 5 to 7 years instead of 30 years on their existing level of income. You don't have to have extra income. It's the way you flow your money that makes a huge difference in allowing you to pay down principal on a regular basis. So I'm going to explain that, but I'm going to first start with the existing system that most people are used to, and then tell you how this is different from that. So the existing system is you get a 30-year mortgage. You make the same payment for 30 years every month. The first 10 to 15 years, you pay pretty much all interest. You're paying very, very little principal for a long, long time in a mortgage. After 15 years, maybe you paid down 10% of the principal, something like that. And then you start paying principal, and by 30 years, it's paid off. Well, the reality, Kris, is that most people don't stay in a home for 30 years, okay?
Right.
Or they refinance. So they never pay it off, or take a
Right.
long time to pay off mortgage with the existing system. And you can see how it's stacked in favor of the bank. They're getting all their interest up front, and then they get the principal later. And they assume you're going to move or you're going to refinance, and they just start the interest clock all over again. So it works really well for the bank, okay?
Right.
Meanwhile, while you're paying on this huge mortgage, mostly interest, your money is sitting in a checking account earning zero, right? So you see how this works. You give your money to the bank for free, and then they charge you interest for 30 plus years. So this is a really good system for the banks, okay?
Right.
What I'm going to do is reverse the tables completely and actually have your money work for you instead of the bank. All right, so here's how mortgage equity optimization works. It uses a home equity line of credit, what's called a HELOC, okay, which is a liquid line, typically in second position on your house. You can put money in, you can take it out, you can write checks on it, you can electronically go from your checking account to the HELOC back. It's completely liquid, okay? But the thing about a HELOC is it's based on what's called average daily balance. So the amount of money you put into the HELOC is pushing down your balance for the amount of time you have it down. So here's what you do. You take your paycheck in your checking account, and instead of keeping it in your checking account earning nothing, you put it in the HELOC, and for the amount of time it's in there, you're pushing your balance down a little bit. You take money from the HELOC, you pay off your first with a particular, whatever the amount, 50,000, whatever it is, and then you pay off the HELOC over 6 months, however long it takes, and you do it again. And then you do it however many times. And within 5 to 7 years, you've paid off your mortgage completely because your money is now working for you instead of the bank. So there's a website. Whenever I give strategies, I give specifics on how people can implement it as well.
That's great. Yeah.
And there's a website called truthinequity.com. It's a free website, and they'll take you step by step. In fact, they'll personalize it for your particular situation. So this might be helpful, Kris. Let me just give you a very simple example of how this would work. Maybe if I give you some numbers, that might help a little bit, all right? So I'm just going to make up some numbers, but give you an idea. So say you have a house worth $300,000. I'll just give you that, okay? And say you have a mortgage for $200,000. You put down $100,000, just to give you an example, all right? So you have a $200,000 first mortgage. Well, today would be about 7% interest, something like that. Even if you had a lower interest, whatever it is, say it's 7%, okay? So that's your current situation. You've got a first at $200,000, you have equity. So you take out a home equity line for, say, $50,000. You're not going to take your complete equity. You're going to take maybe half of it. So you have an equity line now for $50,000 that's empty. You just opened it, and you have a $200,000 mortgage. Okay, so you write a check on the home equity line for $50,000 towards your first. Okay, so now you owe $50 on your home equity line and $150 in your first, right? Now you use the technique we just talked about, and over whatever, 6 months, however long it takes, you pay down that home equity line of credit from $50,000 down to zero, because you're constantly putting your paycheck, all your income into that HELOC, making progress every day in your income. So after, I don't know, say 6 months, I'll say a year. Okay, after a year, you paid that $50,000 with the HELOC off. You then do it again. You now write another check on the HELOC for $50,000 towards your first, which has hardly made any progress at this point.
Right.
And so now the $150,000 is $100. Over the next year, you pay the HELOC down to zero. You do it twice more. Okay. So we're at 4 years now, and you've paid off the first. And then in the fifth year, you pay off your HELOC and you're now mortgage free. Does that help explain it a little bit?
That's amazing. I mean, where were you a few years ago?
I was writing a book. I was writing a book called Master Your Debt.
There you go. There you go.
Where I even sent you the chapter and it describes exactly how this works.
That's
not something banks want you to hear about. Banks do not want you to hear about because they think the great system today is great. You give them your money for free, and you pay them interest for the rest of your life. Sounds great to them,
right?
But you see what the difference is your money every day is making progress on the principal.
Right.
Okay. Now there's three things you need to make mortgage equity optimization work for you. First thing is you have to have positive cash flow during the month. You have to have more income coming in than your expenses because that positive cash flow is what's pushing down the principal on a continuous basis. If you're negative cash flow, this isn't going to work. If you're spending more than you're taking in, there's nothing to pay down the principal. That's the first thing. Second thing, you need a decent credit score. I would say 670 or higher to be able to qualify for the HELOC. But most people would be able to do that. And the third, you need a house. You need an asset to borrow against. And most people are going to have that as well. And with those three, and I would say another thing, a soft skill is discipline. Okay. This takes getting your mind into it and getting into a different habit. See, the habit most people are in now is they just put all their money in a checking account. If they're doing nothing, they make their mortgage payment once a month, and they don't think there's any other alternative. Right. Now you're in the habit of moving your money into the HELOC, paying it down. It takes a little bit of effort, not much, maybe once a month you do something.
Right.
Look at the difference. So on the example we just gave, you paid off your $200,000 mortgage in 5 years, say. Okay. It's not only saving you $200,000, but all the interest you would have paid on that for the next 25 years. So maybe that's another 200,000 or whatever, some huge number. So you're saving, and now after your mortgage is paid off after say 5 years, you keep making the same payment, but now you make it to yourself or you put it in investments and you make your money grow instead of paying down debt.
That's so
what
smart.
A difference. Yeah. What a difference in your life it'll be when you hit 65. Instead of finally paid off my mortgage. Well, I paid that off, 2 years ago, and I've got a big mutual fund portfolio or something that's growing with the same money you've already got. It's just to make the way you flow it makes all the difference. So again, a free place to find out how this works for you individually is truthandequity.com. I've just revolutionized all your listeners and your viewers' lives.
See, you give them safe money tips because that's what we like to talk about, like the secrets of the 1% or things that people don't know about.
They do this all the time.
That is so cool. And it's probably the double. I mean, what you pay in interest, I'm sure you know the stats. Like if you have 200,000, you're paying double of what.
Exactly. Or more. Right? Now today,
or more.
With interest at 7% today, it's more than that.
Sheesh.
Right? Double would be in the old days, like a year or so ago, it was 3%.
Right.
Imagine what you're going to pay at 7%, which is where rates are.
Goodness gracious.
So you have a $200,000 mortgage, it's probably going to cost you $300,000 interest over 30 years, or maybe even more, something like that.
Will that work for lots? Vacant lots?
No, you can't do a HELOC on a vacant lot.
Okay, so it's a HELOC.
Home equity.
On home equity. Okay, see how I don't know that much about that. And I don't think anybody else does either. This is like a secret. I mean, that's amazing. So, okay. And one more time, that site is
truthinequity.com.
Truthinequity.com.
By the way, you can pay off more than your mortgage using the system. You can pay off student loans, credit card debt, car loans, healthcare debt.
Yeah.
You can pay off all your debts using the system, not only your mortgage.
Okay. Yeah. So, and that was what I was going to ask you about this.
Debt free.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about the student loans, but that's just basically the same thing, right? And show me your book.
Student loans like a mortgage today. Student loans like a mortgage today.
It is like a mortgage. Goodness.
If you have graduate school, maybe it's 100,000 for undergraduate, graduate maybe.
Yeah.
If you go to dental school, business school, law school, it's $300,000-$400,000. It's like a mortgage. Sometimes it's bigger than the mortgage, actually.
It's
crazy.
Shocking what people have. I'm blown away. Absolutely. Okay. Well, one thing I've really admired how when you connect with on, on your different media and conversations, you're always able to wrap the current affairs in, right?
Yes,
What's going on. And one of the topics that is on everybody's mind is healthcare and the
right.
bills. Because that what I've seen in 33 years is that most people end up losing their estate before they pass away, either in a nursing home, probate, or the Great Recession, right?
Correct. Correct. And healthcare bills a big thing. I mean, people are living longer, which is good, but it means they have many more healthcare bills than a previous generation would clearly have had. So if you're behind on your healthcare bills, most people don't think there's anything you can do about it, frankly. But the good news is there are things you can do about it. Now, there are a whole group of what are called healthcare advocacy organizations that all they do is negotiate on your behalf with healthcare providers, doctors, hospitals, specialists. These people have very aggressive debt collectors. Okay,
Right.
you have
No
a
joke. Yeah.
heart transplant, and your insurance, even just the copayment could be
Yeah.
20, 30, 50,000, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
They sick the debt collectors on you and really go after you hard.
Yeah.
And people think there's nothing you can do about it. In fact, it's one of the major sources of bankruptcy
Mm-hmm.
is healthcare bills. Okay, so what you do is you get a healthcare advocacy organization, and the one that I think is best is called healthcareadvocates.com, based in Philadelphia,
Okay.
and they have a whole staff. And this is all they do is the first thing they do is analyze your healthcare bills in great detail, and they say you charge this guy $80 for an aspirin. We're going to move that down to $1. Okay.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
really, you can't do this yourself. It's all in these codes. You can't
Yeah.
possibly figure out what's in
Yeah.
these. So they go through line by line and
Mhm.
get the cost down to something reasonable instead of these wildly inflated numbers that the hospitals and doctors often
Yeah.
charge. The first thing they do. Then they negotiate with the CFO of the hospital or the financial officer of the medical clinic or whatever it may be. And they've been doing this for years, and they get them to settle for like 10 or 15 cents on the dollar.
Right.
Would the hospital rather get, say it's a $200,000 bill, would they rather get 10,000 or nothing? Okay, so they'll take it, but the individual is not set up to negotiate with the CFO of the hospital. Okay, so it's not going to happen. Okay,
Yeah.
they just send the debt collectors to harass you into your
Right.
grave. So that's what these people do, and they only get paid based on the savings. So if they don't save or anything, you don't pay anything. So it's a
Perfect.
no
Yeah.
lose operation, and
Yeah.
it's helped tons of people get out. Now, so again, so their website's healthcareadvocates.com. They've got a phone number, 215-735-7711. And I've dealt with him for years. He's actually shown me, the guy who runs it, who has a whole staff, here was a bill for this guy who had a heart transplant for $300,000, and he settled it for $5,000 or something like that, And it's like, how did you do that? Well, that's what we do. So
there it is. There you go. Yeah.
you just have to know the right places to go, and there you go. So I just saved you hundreds of thousands of dollars in your healthcare bills.
Absolutely. People don't really realize how those bills are. Like my mom had, God bless her, she had cancer for 10 years
Oh,
and 5 days of chemo in
the bills.
2010.
And what do the bills add up to, Chris, over the time? Just roughly, what do they add up to?
Millions of dollars. I mean,
Yes.
her chemo for 5 days was $90,000. So she had chemo 5 days a month, right? So $1 million is not a lot of money. So my
Right.
dad was in, because they had a lot of money, that he didn't get long-term care insurance. So he
Oh
ended
my
up bending down the state one day. He said, "Honey, you're going to inherit $1 million." And I'm glad I was in the right mind. I said, "Dad, I just want you." And I really meant it. I never counted on the money. A few years later, came back, Jordan, and said, "Well, you might get something." And they went through maybe, I don't know, I can't even guess, $4 to $7 million in 10
millions.
years.
Crazy.
Doctors, therapies, drugs. People don't get what happens.
Crazy. So, I mean, that could have been negotiated down to whatever, 1 million instead of something.
Yeah, we didn't know you then. And my dad was a great scientist, and Einstein gave him a class. So
But nobody has any idea these things exist.
No.
So And
Yeah.
the hospital's certainly not going to tell you about it. I'll tell you that.
Nobody, right. They're not going to tell you. They get less money. Well, one thing that I'm really passionate about and that we have in common is financial literacy and
Right.
teaching people because you go to school, you learn how to make money, you get out of school, what do? Go make money and give it to somebody else to gamble. And I've seen a lot of people, they get something and they don't even know what they have. And then they get,
Right.
is the market going to be up or down when I retire? And so teaching the education and you're a big nonprofit person, right? You've got
Absolutely. Yep.
a lot of guidance in that because I see a lot of people that have successful businesses and they get to the midlife that they want to give back, like what happened to
Right.
me, right? I want to, if midlife, I was like, I want to share this with people so they know, not just wait till the end of the life and then start their retirement plan.
Right. I'll just give you one organization. It's a good one called Jumpstart Coalition. You may be familiar with them already. And that's a centralized kind of a clearinghouse for all kinds of personal financial literacy efforts. And it's not only schools is part of it, but it's also the workplace. A lot of people have these 401ks and wonderful things, but they don't know how to allocate it. They might have various employee benefits. They don't know how to take advantage of it. There's life insurance, there's health insurance. There are things, and at the workplace, people don't know what to do. So employee education at the workplace can be very good. And then in retirement, a lot of people have accumulated money, but particularly in recent years when you were getting zero on CDs and money market funds, they didn't know where to put it that had some safety. Now at least you get a little bit more of a yield. But retirement financial education is important too. So it's not
Right.
only schools all the way through. We are a financially illiterate country, okay? And the result
Totally.
is what
Yeah.
you see in the amount of debt we have. We have over $1 trillion in credit card debt,
Yeah.
roughly 1.8 trillion in student loan debt,
Mm.
over $1 trillion in car loan debt, and about 15 trillion in mortgage debt. And let's add the healthcare bill. That's another trillion or so on the healthcare bills as well. So, people, that's what happens is if your income is not as enough as your expenses, people make up the difference with debt and then they get into trouble. And now
Right.
you got 20% interest piling on you all the time and you get sunk.
It's,
So
yeah,
it's a mindset to
it
be
is.
in control of your money
Mhm.
instead of being a victim. Okay, that's why I did this book called Master Your Debt, which is about mastering your debt and having, instead of it being a master of you. That's basically the idea of that book.
Boy, I think you need to teach the guys that are running the government too. They keep printing all this
Oh,
money,
yes.
right? And then we're
Well, the
going to have
difference
another
between
4 trillion, and
right.
and then what?
The difference between them and us is they can print it. You
Right?
can't print Kris Miller dollars. Nobody's going to accept your money. But
Darn.
the dollars at the Treasury, they just keep spinning it out and make people accept them. So that's the
Right.
difference. So
You know, I think your book, the debt, about the debt is. I think that hits everybody. Maybe you could give a few tips because the budgeting and the savings and discretionary and non-discretionary and the credit card monsters, right?
yeah,
People can't get out of debt, and the people that are stuck in the paycheck to paycheck, they always say they can't save, but they don't step back and see all the extra things they might be spending their money on, or things that they can
work on
downsize.
both sides of the equation. Okay, on
Right.
the income side, if your existing job is not enough, do a side hustle. Okay, you can do things online. You can drive for Uber or deliver food with DoorDash. I mean, there are things you can do in your off hours to boost your income, quite simply. So,
Right.
and invest and get income. Okay,
Right.
you don't have to just be working all the time. You can be sleeping and earning money in your sleep.
Oh, we don't have to work all the time. Okay.
No. So,
Yeah.
whether it be dividend stocks that are producing dividends, which you can compound, whether it be bonds, where today you can get roughly 5%, 4 or 5% on bonds and money market funds, there are ways for your money to work and really
Right.
grow for you.
Right.
It's the difference between what I call positive compounding versus negative compounding. Positive compounding is your money is producing more money every day and it's compounding on itself.
Yeah.
Negative compounding is you've got debt compounding on itself, more and more debt all the time that sinks you. What a difference in your life. You're doing positive versus negative compounding.
That's a positive difference, right? Exactly. Well, you are known as America's money answer man, right? And you've been on all the TV, everybody sees you on there. And everybody's got their opinion. Some people think, it's a recession or it's a deflation or it's this, but the trends are not really trending very positive. I just want to, get your take on where you think we're going, and then I got to throw in what's happening with the BRICS
Sure.
and that, the new currency that they're going to have that's gold back, and then is that going to affect the prime, the currencies
Okay. Well, as
and
for
yeah.
the U.S. economy, I mean, I think we're doing relatively better than the rest of the world. Europe is in a recession, and the whole Ukraine war has been just devastating for everything. And just recently, the Russians said they're going to stop exports of Ukrainian
Oh
grain.
boy,
We're going to have starvation around the world, and grain prices have already shot up 20%. So it's
goodness.
caused inflation, it's caused
Mm,
dislocations around the world, and
yes.
is getting hit hard.
Yeah.
China is in very weak position right now. They've had this
Right.
enormous growth, particularly in real estate, where they were building all these huge cities. Well, a lot of the developers have gone bankrupt, and you have these so-called ghost cities. You have all these towers that are empty, or maybe they're half built, and people put their life savings into buying these apartments, and then
Mm.
they're never going to get them delivered because the developer went bankrupt. Okay,
Whoa.
and it's really hurting the Chinese economy very badly. And the latest number from them was inflation was down 5.4% in the latest month. That's deflation. That's
Mm.
because things are, and they had a COVID lockdown, which basically shut the economy off for like 2 years.
Mm.
So China's being very aggressive politically around the world, but domestically they are in a world of hurt. Okay.
Right.
Latin America's got all kinds of problems in its own way, and revolutions and things going on all the time. So compared to the rest of the world, we're doing pretty well. I mean, we're going to be growing at maybe a 2% rate this year. I don't think we're going to have a recession. The Fed has raised rates 10 times. They're probably going to raise 11 times. Maybe they'll stop after that enough. So it takes a while. But inflation, which a year ago was 9%, is now 3%. So it's coming down, which is what the Fed's looking for. So I think the Fed's probably going to stop raising rates, but keep rates at this rough level of 5.5% for quite a while to make sure inflation is under control. So
Okay.
it's okay to have 2 to 3% inflation. What you don't want is what's happening in China right now, which is
Right.
deflation. That is scary. And that's hard to get out of if you've got a deflationary cycle.
Right.
The best example there being Japan. Japan peaked in 1990, and the next 2 decades, they call them the lost decades because
Right.
it was deflation in Japan. Prices were falling. And even though the Japanese government was spending like crazy and going into debt and building roads and bridges and everything, they couldn't get out of that deflationary cycle. I think the same thing's happening right now in China. So I'd much rather have slight inflation than out of control deflation, which I think is what's hitting China and to some extent Europe as well. And
Mhm.
on top of that, you've got the demographic problems, which is that you have an older population in Europe, in China, in Japan, and also in the US to some extent. And you have these older people, the baby boomers, who need to be supported by younger people, and there aren't enough of them to do it.
Right.
So that's why Social Security and Medicare, nobody seems to want to do anything about them, but
I know.
they're in trouble. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
Medicare
Jeez.
crossing into, not be able to pay its bills in 5 years, and Social Security in maybe 10 years, something like that. So
Oh
that's
boy.
bad. But in
Yeah.
China, they don't have Social Security or Medicare in China.
Mm.
So older people have to be taken care of by the young people who don't want to be doing that. So
You're saying
they've
10
got a
years?
demographic time
Yeah.
bomb that's gone off
Sounds like
already in China
Mhm.
and Europe. Italy, Germany, France all have older populations
Right.
that are not being supported by the young ones. So
Yeah.
compared to the rest of the world, we're doing much better.
Right. But you're saying Medicare in 10 years? So no, Social
5 years,
Security in 10 years, Medicare in 5 years. That's
correct. By
pretty
about 2028, correct.
yeah, that's pretty important, I would think, right?
And Congress is not going to do anything about it. I mean,
They're
they talk about it, but they say, "Oh no, Medicare, Social Security is off the table. We can't even
yeah.
discuss it
Then they don't
until
want
it
to talk
blows
about
up."
anything important now. Yeah, so they're just wait till it blows up or something, I guess.
Yeah,
Uh,
that could be ugly. So, but
it
it's
is
part of
ugly.
the
It is
demographics.
ugly. Is
Demographics.
that
In the past, the United States would solve this by
mm,
immigration,
mhm.
right? As our birth rate's been going down for decades, we don't replace our own population domestically. I think it's 2.1 babies, and
Mm,
we're like 1.3 now. So, I mean, lots of couples have no children, and lots of people don't get married. There's a lot. I think 25% of the population is single. So we're just having fewer and fewer domestic babies. In the past, the US would make that up with immigration to get the workers we need. Now we've got a whole debate over immigration, and we're trying to stop people. We're limiting immigration. So that's why you have this huge labor shortage in America. Huge. There's about 9.5 million unfilled jobs in America that people can't find anybody to do it because the immigrants in the past that would have done it aren't being allowed in.
Well, I think there's, as far I've heard, that there's at least 10 million that have gotten through this last few years that they literally have documented. There's a lot of people that have come through, but that's another mess that they don't want to get down in Congress and talk about. Social Security, immigration, it's the same old story over and over again. But that's kind of like, you look at the government, but that's really what's going on in your own family, right? And
Right.
waiting till it all explodes, or you get the debt collector knocking at the door. What do you about? Okay, let me throw in one more. How about the
All right.
CBDC? What do you think about the CBDC? You think that's imminent? They are putting it in the banks, right?
You're talking about the new currency, you mean?
The digital currency.
Right. So the digital currency is being implemented worldwide.
Okay.
The purpose of it is to be able to have the governments track every penny you spend.
Right. Yes.
Now, in theory, this is backed by gold, but I don't think there's enough gold to back the amount of currency that's out there.
No.
So
No.
it's basically a control mechanism. Now, in China, they're used to this. In
Right.
China, there's surveillance all the time, and you walk on the street, and there's like 20 cameras watching you and doing
Right.
face identification to make sure you don't do anything wrong.
Right.
We're not used to that. But if they control the currency, they know exactly where you're spending your money, and they want to collect taxes. And I don't think it's a good thing, but I think it is coming.
I don't think it's a good thing either, and I think it's closer than people think,
Right.
actually. And you can prophesize and say, certain things are going to cause it to happen faster or not, but it's a good idea. That's why I'm always pushing safe money, right? And are you a fan of precious metals or having
Yes.
something?
Yes.
What percentage of precious metals do you recommend?
At least 10%, if not
Okay.
more. Gold is
Okay.
up to roughly 2,000 an ounce, something like that.
Right.
When you have all this money printing, I mean, we printed trillions of dollars during COVID.
Oh,
Trillions.
yeah.
The Federal Reserve and the Treasury's balance sheet went from about 4 trillion to about 9 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
Cut back a little bit. That is inflationary in the long run. And Europe did the same thing, the European Central Bank, and the Chinese did the same thing, and the Japanese. All the central banks just printed trillions and trillions of dollars. Okay. So what that does is devalue those dollars, and it means that people want hard assets instead. I mean, an extreme example would be like Zimbabwe or Venezuela or Argentina or something, where the currency becomes worthless because they just keep printing it forever.
Right.
People don't even transact in currency. The only thing you can transact in is gold or hard assets of various types. Now, we're not there yet, but I
Right.
think gold definitely, I mean, it's gone from 1,500 and 2,000, kind of gently is going up. And the other currency, I guess you'd say, is Bitcoin. Bitcoin's gone, it's volatile day to day for sure. But, it got up to 65,000, then it went back to like 10,000. Now it's about 30,000. I think in the long run, you want some Bitcoin in your portfolio as well. It's kind of an alternative gold to some extent.
Mhm.
And people are putting money into Bitcoin as an alternative to these inflated dollars that are being printed like crazy.
Right. And maybe I'm more on the safe money side, but I have a feeling that's going to be short-lived if the governments are going to try to control. They don't want a Bitcoin. So I think it's going to have a little legs for a certain amount of time, but if they dominate the health and the wealth and globally, which is what they're doing, right? The one world government, revelations, we're right here. I mean, it's real. It's
The thing about Bitcoin. The thing about Bitcoin is it's global. It's on the blockchain. It's not like in one central location.
right. That's
And
why
if
it's better
they
than
push it out from one place, it just goes somewhere else. I mean, there are certain places. I think El Salvador is like wanting to do everything in Bitcoin, and there are
Yeah.
like Puerto Rico, and there are places that want to encourage Bitcoin trading and so on. So
Yeah.
if China pushes it out, it's not going to disappear. It's just going to move somewhere else. People want to use Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies
Right.
to make very quick payments. So they're not going to be able to snuff it out. It's just not going to happen.
Okay, well, that's more positive than what I've been hearing anyway, for sure. Well, boy, we could just talk for a long time here. just to wrap up, maybe look, someone's just zooming through their life and they hear this podcast, and make sure you guys subscribe, but listen to Jordan. I mean, he's a wise man, and I just want you to drop a few little tips and jewels that people could grab a hold of, that they could start to take action on and get balanced.
Well, let me give you some other ideas.
Okay.
There's one thing called PPPs, which is a private placement platform, or it's also known as a ping trade. Okay, I actually sent you a little bit of description on these things. Now, the minimum it's on the high side, but a lot of people have it. Minimum is like $1 million, actually do it. But if you do that, you get incredible returns, typically like 100% in 10 days. And then after that, 100% per month for 10 months, something like that. It sounds magical, it sounds impossible, but it is absolutely real. And I know it for sure, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, a ping trade is where you literally leave the $1 million in your bank account, and every day the computer pings it to make sure it's still there, okay? You don't have to move it anywhere. And that money is earning, whatever it is, 100% over what's called a bullet trade over 10 days, typically. And then it converts into a longer term, typically a 40-week kind of trade. So these bullet trades and ping trades and PPPs are legitimate. They're out there. They're offered by HSBC and Barclays and UBS and big traditional banks, but most people don't even know they exist. So I've now made your money grow 100%.
Whoa! I never knew about them, and I've been in money for 3 decades. But is it just the money's pinging into an investment, or where's it pinging?
Well, so what they do is they will do what are called managed buy-sell programs. So if you know what SBLCs are, standby letters of credit, okay, so it's a form of security, and what they do is they buy and sell it several times a day. They buy it at 44, they sell it at 68, then they do another one. They've got an exit buy ready before they even buy it in the first place. So they're doing rapid trading like this that's completely secure, and that's how they generate these incredibly high returns. And the banks make a lot more money than they're paying you. If you get 100%, the bank is making 700%, something like that. So don't feel bad for the bank. They're doing just fine with these trades.
Right. I'm not feeling bad for banks. But what about the poor little people that don't have it? Now, when I get my extra million or whatever, that sounds interesting. Never really knew about that. No. But for the average person that throws their money in a bank that doesn't pay any interest, there's not really a lot of options for liquid.
Well, today, you can do money market funds are in the 5% range. Online banks that don't have all the cost of brick and mortar can be in the 5% range. So there are definite banks out there that today are paying in the 4 and 5% range, which is not bad. I mean, if inflation's at 3, you're slightly ahead of inflation. It's certainly better than what we were used to the last 10 years when we we're getting 0.
Right.
But traditional banks are continuing to pay 0 because they feel they can get away with it.
Right.
But a lot of these online banks are paying decent yields, 4 and 5%. So for the average person that wants to stay liquid, you can get a decent return today.
Okay, there you go. Boy, we've covered a whole lot today, Jordan. It's been a really honor to have you. Any other final notes you want to drive everybody to?
One more quick one for you.
Good.
Student loans. We talked about student loans.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a major change recently, which is President Biden had said we're going to forgive $400 billion in student loans, $10,000 for some, up to $20,000 if you had a Pell Grant. And everything was going along smoothly. And then a little place called the Supreme Court said, no, you're not doing that. You don't have the legal authority to do it. And frankly, the Supreme Court was right. Congress can do it, but the president cannot forgive $400 billion by the stroke of his pen with an executive order. So I think the Supreme Court was right about that, actually. But a lot of people, 43 million Americans have student loans. So you have 43 million disappointed people out there who are expecting this 10,000 or 20,000 to just disappear. Right. And now it's coming back. And the interest, they haven't been paying interest on it, okay? So a lot of people are not happy about that. In addition to which, there was a 3-year holiday for paying on student loans because of COVID that ends at the end of August. And starting, I think, in October, you're going to have to start paying. So the people with student loans are getting a double whammy of the 10,000 that they thought was going to disappear coming back per person, and having to start making payments on what they have not been making payments on in 3 years. And by the way, the interest was continuing to compound during those 3 years, even though they weren't making payments. So in many, I think it's the latest, it was something like 60% of the people with student loans owe more now than when they graduated.
Oh my gosh, that is like there's
Even if
another.
they've been making payments, because it hasn't been built,
Oh,
cutting debt. So, but
yeah,
I'm about solutions, not only problems. So
right,
here's the solution.
right.
Consolidate all your student loans into one payment at a lower interest rate. Typically, you can get about 4% today. And now you make one payment, you can pay it off faster. Student loans are at 7, 8. If they're private loans, 10%, something like that. A place I like is called Splash Financial.
Okay.
Their website, splashfinancial.com. And you consolidate federal loans, private loans, all the different loans, graduate school loans, all into one at a lower payment and a lower interest rate. I'm not making them magically disappear like Biden tried to, but at least you can pay them off quicker with a lower interest rate. So that might help some.
Oh, that's great. And is that your company, splash.com?
No, that's a company based in Cleveland.
And you're just sharing that information. How nice.
I'm just sharing information. They help a lot of people refinance their student loans.
Oh boy, that's really, I get so many people that ask me, and it's hard to find someone to trust that you can consolidate, and that's great. Everybody, we should come back once that hits the news and people realize, oh, right, I got this.
Well, that shocked a lot of people because they thought that Biden would get away with it, and I never thought that it was legal what he was doing. There was never any legislation giving him the right to forgive $400 billion in student loans for the struggle.
Just sign that into being without the Congress. Hey, that was like Constitution 101.
I call that constitutional chutzpah. Yes.
That's it right there. Exactly.
But the Supreme Court did not go for that chutzpah. Okay.
Yeah. Whew. Okay.
Anyway, we've covered a lot this time. Okay, look at what we've done. We've paid people's mortgages off in 5 to 7 years. We've refinanced their student loans. Mm-hmm. We have them a PPP program where they can earn 100% in 10 days. Okay. We've got their healthcare bills paid off or reduced down to a dramatically lower level. They're in great shape now. See?
There you go. Now it's time for a vacation. I love that.
Credit card now.
Yeah, just get rid of the credit card, okay? Just if you can't pay for it, just back off and get out of debt. Boy, Jordan, you were just. And I love how you summed it all up and everything. So, again, it's a real honor to have you here. And we'll come back again and maybe hit some of that student loan, because when it comes on the news, then people will pay attention maybe.
If people want to contact me, by the way, my email is Jordan at moneyanswers.com. I've taken emails from people for many, many years and love to help them in any way possible.
There you go, Jordan at moneyanswers.com.
Correct.
Perfect. All right, Jordan, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Kris. Appreciate it.
All right. There's so much to learn about healthy money. I hope today's discussion brings you one step closer to securing and protecting your future. So you can get started on the right foot, go to meetwithkrismiller.com and schedule your free financial fitness strategy session. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to Money 911 so you don't miss our next episode, which includes health, wealth, and peace of mind.